Percy with an early run, he's onside this time! It's 1-1! Andre Schürrle, it's 7! It's Mario Götze! What a goal! What a goal to win a World Cup!
I mean, wow. Let's all just take a collective moment and gather our breaths. Pause for reflection on what was ludicrous, laughable, outlandish, illogical. I'm literally just reading and rattling off things from the dictionary because there are no words. And I could keep going, but there's nothing quite that will grip you in the same way that football can grip you, and nothing quite like the World Cup to grip you. This is the Beermat World Cup podcast. Whew. Well, again, like I'm almost stunned, and the idea that there are 2 games we've got to get through before we get to that is hilarious. And the fact is that the first game itself featured 7 goals, was the most goals in any World Cup game so far, and is basically a footnote of like absolute no consequence almost now, is hilarious. Belgium 5, Tunisia 2. I gave Belgium a lot of criticism for their performance in the first game, even though they won by 3 goals. There's almost a temptation actually I'm still not entirely enamoured with their play. But what I will say is that whereas against Panama it was a bit static and it was a bit sort of lacking imagination and ideas, this is what happens when you play against a side that will allow what were tactics of let's just give it to the really good lads. As far as Martinez is concerned, that's his A, B and C plan, because they've actually got quite a lot of good lads. Then, you know, when you're allowed to and the space is there for players like Hazard and Lukaku to run into and beyond, then this is the result, and quite emphatic. And the one thing I would say for Tunisia in their favour is the idea that they've had 2 setbacks in both games, against England and now against Belgium, and their immediate reaction is great. Their immediate reaction is positive. The only problem is that you can't keep putting yourself in a hole and expecting to dig yourself out. And I would like to see what other sides, and again, I'm not entirely sure what this says about Tunisia or the 2 sides I'm going to mention, but I would like to see what 2 other sort of 3rd seed sides would perform as well against England. And Belgium score 3 goals, so, you know, sort of not exactly the greatest of consolations, but there you have it for them. And Belgium will move on, and what this result does actually do is that regardless of England's performance tomorrow against Panama, it does make it look very unlikely now, unless England go goal crazy themselves, that might have sewn up first place for them. Whether that's a good thing or not, we don't know, so we'll see what goes on there. And next up, from a game that had the most goals of any game in the World Cup to the game that had the most fouls, the Mexico manager has actually reported South Korea and said, like, no, something must be done. After 24 fouls, I believe, were committed. That's not quite, but it's nearly a foul every 3 minutes, and that's impressive when you're racking it up to that degree. I think even Tony Pulis will be happy with that one. Mexico did what we expected them to do here. It's easy performing against Germany and putting in the performance when you're not that much is on your shoulders, and you can turn up and be the shock side that no one saw coming, even though there are sort of breadcrumbs as to that result there for everyone to see, but no one does until after the fact, because predispositions are what it's all about. But in this instance, it was, can you get the job done again in circumstances where now the eyes of the world are on you, and given what's happening to everyone else, you know, why not Mexico? And this feels like such a dumb comment that you would say in any other tournament. You'd be like, well, of course, why not Mexico? Because there's about 5-6 other teams in front of them. But in this one, in this particular World Cup, that's a legitimate question. And they have got the 6 points, and I would even speculate as to what this means for the last game, but I can't talk about the last game for Mexico without talking about the game tonight between Germany and Sweden. So I just want to touch on South Korea before we get to that. I mean, amazingness. As far as they're concerned, it was always going to be an uphill battle for them in any circumstance once the game against Sweden goes the wrong way. And you can actually sort of see this from the other side of the coin in Germany's perspective. The way these games have lined up has not been perfect for them. So, like England, Belgium, the way these games lined up, they line up really well. If South Korea maybe start against Germany and have that sort of the same potential to go under the radar, I'm not suggesting they could have beaten Germany, but they were put on the back foot. Not even by the schedule. I mean, it's their poor performance, but once the Sweden game goes down, they've got nowhere else to go. And Mexico are always going to come into town hot off the Germany win, and your best chance there is to catch them cold. And it's just an uphill battle that you can't really win for them. And so that's that for them. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. And so then we come to quite possibly one of not only the best games this World Cup, one of the best games of any World Cup I can remember. Germany 2, Sweden 1. And I'm desperate not to go too far over the top, but fuck it. I'm carried away with absolute, I can't even say delight or despair, because if you're German or Swedish, you will be at this utter peak or complete low. That's what football does, and that's what football is. And it's a cruel, horrible, brilliant, amazingly cruel and desperate and horrible and brilliant sport. It can take you to unparalleled highs and unfathomable lows. And the thing for Sweden is they're not dead. Whether they can bring themselves out of this is another question. But you want to take it all in your stride. You want to take a deep breath, not just for us watching who are in desperate need of it, but for them as a squad and as a coaching staff. You can look at it and you can go, okay, right. And it is literally a series of decisions. It's not one decision, because one decision won't necessarily be the be-all and end-all. As much as it comes down to Toni Kroos in that one instance, it's not that, it's the foul before it, which looked a stupid decision the moment he made it. It's if you rewind that about another minute, I think Gudetti goes through and has a really tame shot at the goalkeeper when perhaps he might have been better off taking it into the corner. It's the idea that the Sweden goal itself just nestles rightly in the far corner where the fine margins, basically, is what I'm saying. And it quite literally inches and seconds. And it's not 1 second, it's a collection of them across the 90. And it's good in a sense that Germany's fate actually not even that it's still in their own hands, it's that it's actually going to be decided by football now. Because for as much as the hilarity of Sweden and Mexico playing out the 0-0 would have been, that would have felt slightly like it was doing the game a disservice. So I'm hoping and I'm glad that whatever, so because we could end up now in a position where 3 teams are on 6 points, and I haven't even dared look at the connotations for that and how this breaks down, because I've literally just gone from watching the end of that game, trying to stop screaming and running up and down the stairs and just going, I can't believe Kroos has done that, to this. In the end, it's not even about like who deserved what, because Germany weren't great for large periods of that. And I wouldn't even necessarily say I've got a theory as to how they managed to get through that, but it is interesting in the position they find themselves in. And one of the reasons why this is became such an intriguing tale of a match is because in my lifetime, certainly, I've never really seen Germany this vulnerable. I think a lot of people have never seen Germany this vulnerable. If you throw France or Holland or England into that same scenario, it becomes one of many. And in that instance, it becomes very easy then for the squad, the team on the pitch, the decision making to become fractured, the atmosphere in the stadium to become toxic, and decision making to become very sort of fear based. And from what I've seen tonight in Germany, there's not a lot of quality on display, but very little of it was entrenched in fear. It was always about trying to do the right things and whether they had the ability to do that or not. Now, the other thing I would say is that when they come out in the second half, and this is something they're going to have to do more of, obviously, is it's something as simple as like the fundamentals of football are collectively, I think it's probably slightly more than this, but it's playing with the right mentality, with purpose, and the right game intelligence. All combined, it's what people would describe as passion, and it's an unintangible quality. But no, it exists, and this is pretty much what it is. And a lot of that is very simple stuff. And that's why when Germany come out in the second half and just sort of go very direct and very quick, it rattles Sweden, who have done very much the same to them in the first half. And I feel sorry for the Swedish keeper, in fact, because he's had 1 or 2 or 3 really good saves during that half, and I had to look back to see whether he could have done better with the free kick, and no. It's funny, actually, because when you watch that free kick, very much when I watched the first goal, even, I would say that I sort of watched that goal in 3 different realities in the same time. I was very much watching it in the present. I was watching it in the future, in the sense of I can picture myself watching this in however many years' time and go, I remember that game, because you will not forget. And Germany are a kind of side that in the last couple of World Cups are littered with moments that you will not forget. The 7-1 springs immediately to mind, and my word, does that look like we could now have that rematch on the card. And obviously you want to watch it in the past because you want to go and see the replay of that right now. That game is everything that football is about. It's about careers and lives and histories of countries coming together, and it all being tossed around over the course of 90 minutes, for lack of a better term, and in the end, I mean, without meaning to steal a Gary Lineker quote and sort of attach the end of it, and in the end Germany wins. You would be hard pressed to want to come up against them for the rest of the tournament, because when a side gets a feel for, okay, we've had a let off, or this is ours to win now, then, you know, it's hard to see them being this poor again for the rest of it. They've had their moment, and we watching have had our moment. This is why we do it. This is why we watch football. This is why the World Cup is the greatest. Thank you for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.